Right now, Arsenal are the best football team in England. But in spite of this fact, a slightly worrying slump has shown up in their data in the period following the World Cup break. Arsenal's defensive numbers have been getting worse. So, what is the reason behind this decline, and does it even matter? One of the best ways of assessing a team's defensive performance is to take a look at the chances that the opposition are creating against them. We could look at the raw shot data to see how many chances a team are conceding at any one time, but shots can of course vary in value. To get a better sense of how well a team are doing defensively then, it can be good to look at the expected goal value of the chances that they concede. Expected goal models assign values to chances based on how likely they are to result in a goal, and this can give us a much better idea of defensive performance. If we look at Arsenal's performance over the course of the season, according to this metric, we will see that things have taken a turn for the worse since the Premier League resumed after the World Cup. This plot shows you the expected goals against figure for Arsenal through the season on a 5-game rolling average. That dip you can see in the middle is the period just before the World Cup, and as you can see, Arsenal were at their best defensively for that stretch of the season, only conceding around 0.5 expected goals across those games. Now what this means is that you would only expect them to concede 1 goal every other game on the basis of the quality of chances that they were facing. However, as soon as the post-World Cup numbers enter the data, we see a steep rise, with Arsenal eventually hitting around 1.5 expected goals against in February in the run of games which saw them drop points to Everton, Brentford and Manchester City. There is a sharp drop-off after this point, but that's largely due to the Leicester City game entering the dataset. In that game, Leicester were unable to generate a single chance against Arsenal, resulting in an expected goals against figure of 0. That skews the plot slightly, and as soon as it drops out of the data, we can see the numbers start to rise again. Now this defensive regression shows up well if you compare this shot map of chances conceded by Arsenal before and after the World Cup break. What's most noticeable here are the chances being generated inside the 6-yard box by Arsenal's opponents. In the 21 games before the World Cup, Arsenal only conceded 7 chances within the 6-yard box, none of which resulted in a goal. After the break, they seem to have become much more vulnerable within the 6-yard box, conceding more chances and, more importantly, 5 goals from that area. So, where might this rise in chance quality have come from? Well, from a tactical point of view, you might have expected opposition teams to start sitting deeper against Arsenal in the second half of the season, spending more time in their own half and refusing to commit players forward in possession, but instead looking to hit them on the counter. And this shows up in terms of the sort of goals that Arsenal have been conceding after the World Cup break. The amount of goals that they've conceded from deep build-up has dropped considerably in the second half of the season. This suggests that teams are not trying to progress the ball as much as they were against Arsenal, and instead are looking to hit them more directly through transition. However, Arsenal still seem to be as effective at preventing goals in transition after the World Cup break. So although teams may have changed their play style to face them, it seems as though the result has been a net gain to Arsenal defensively. One area that does stand out in this plot though is set-piece goals. Since the World Cup, Arsenal have conceded 8 goals from set pieces compared to 5 before. If we actually look at the expected goals against conceded from set pieces, we can see a similar decline after the World Cup. Again, the big peak that we can see in this plot correlates to the run of games in February where Arsenal dropped a number of points. Although there is a drop-off after this peak again, it's worth noting that there were 2 games in a row where Arsenal conceded no expected goals against from set pieces, Everton and Leicester. But the fact of the matter remains. When Arsenal concede set pieces, they tend to concede expected goals, and as a result, actual goals. There is also a sense in which Arsenal are being impacted by game state as the season progresses. What we mean by game state is the factors within the game which can affect the way that both teams play. For example, a team with a lead may play differently to how they play when they're drawing or losing. At the beginning of the season, Arsenal was scoring goals fairly early on with a level of regularity. However, as this plot from online analyst Scott Willis shows, this trend line over the course of the season shows that Arsenal's first goal has been slowly arriving later as the season has gone on. What this means is that Arsenal have not been able to sit on a lead for as long as they have been doing in the first half of the season, meaning that they're more likely to be aggressive and thereby defensively open for greater stretches in the second half of the season. So, should Arsenal fans be concerned about their defensive decline since the World Cup? What the most important factor here is that Arsenal's expected goals for is still well in advance of their expected goals against. But beyond that, it seems natural that in the course of a season, the team's oppositions will start to find out where their weaknesses lie and find ways of exploiting them, which of course results in a slight decline in their defensive numbers. If you like this video, please consider subscribing to the channel. The Athletic is home to some of the world's best sports journalists, including David Ornstein, Daniel Taylor, Ollie Kay, Amy Lawrence and Rafa Honigstein. There are journalists dedicated to each Premier League team, and you can try it for free now for 30 days. See the link in the description.